Is Dr. Miller-Meeks from Iowa for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Thorpe, for testifying before this select subcommittee today. This hearing could not come at a better time, especially with the coronavirus pandemic in the rearview mirror. And despite the pandemic, during the pandemic, we saw clear collusion, non-conspiratorial, between certain stakeholders and government entities, such as, one example, how the American Federation of Teachers and Randy Weingarten were heavily involved in the drafting of the CDC school closure guidance, with how we discussed and talked about infection-acquired immunity, which is a real thing, but even public health people were denying that it existed. We have evidence of that from this select subcommittee. Collaboration and collusion between non-medical entities like the AFT and the government have real-world consequences. It's no secret that keeping children out of the classroom had devastating impacts on their mental health and education markers, including reading and math scores. It's also forced parents to stay home with their children to participate in remote learning rather than being able to go to work and support their families. In this scenario, there was no peer-reviewed or medical backing, but rather sheer political interest that occurred at the expense of children, parents, teachers, and the country writ large. Part of doing medical research and going through the peer review process means changing, correcting, or eliminating portions of your work. It is also important to recognize the reality that authors and those in the medical community should be comfortable defending their work and be able to explain rationale behind those findings. And Dr. Thorpe, I think you may have already explained this, but can you please detail the review process for publications?
Yes, if a paper is is submitted to a peer review journal, first we decide if we're going to have it reviewed, and we do that in collaboration with some advisors that we have. And then we send it out, and it goes through successive rounds of review and revision by experts. And only after it survives all of that do we then prepare it for publication, where we check over it. And then if there are concerns raised about the paper after that, we mediate the discussions about those and decide if there are other things that need to be done.
Having gone through that process for publication, I can
Congratulations.
that it's arduous. Have you ever notified the government of certain articles or topics that your journal was reviewing? And have you ever felt pressured by a government to publish, or any government to publish or not publish certain articles?
I've never done that for a research article, but my opinion pieces go to 8,000 reporters 4 days before they are published. And a lot of times if we think that somebody might get a question about something that's in one of my opinion pieces, we let them know ahead of time, so that they'll have a complete answer if they get asked. And I have, since I wrote about a lot of government officials during this period, and I still do, in all administrations and in all countries around the world, I do from time to time let them know ahead of time that there's an opinion piece coming that they might get asked about.
Well, thank you. And since you mentioned opinion pieces, I think that there was research that was suppressed due to groupthink. And how does your journal combat groupthink as it is currently magnified by peer review?
Well, thankfully, we rely on a peer-reviewed process that weights evidence. And scientists are opinionated people. We have, just like everybody else, but we also know, and we could have done a lot better job at explaining this, that science is a work in progress. And so when we see new data, we change the way we're thinking, and I obviously did that many times during the pandemic, and so did everybody else. And in the future, we need to do a much better job telling people that. And I think it's something that we take for granted because that's what makes science fun. That's why we do it, because it changes. And we need to do a much better job of helping the public understand that. And I've written many opinion pieces for the scientific community on that topic.
Yeah, as you correctly pointed out, science is not consensus of opinion. And I just want to say, since the time I came into Congress in 2021, I have talked about why the origins of COVID-19 were important. Not partisan, not conspiratorial, but one, laboratory safety. The world has a right to know that the correct type of research is being done in the correct lab safety environment. Number two, immediate disclosure of viruses or bacteria that may lead to a pandemic. And number four, the ethics of the type of research that is being done in those laboratories. To say that there was no certainty and no outcome from these hearings, I am proud of the work this select subcommittee has done. We are talking about this topic today because people dared to question the narrative that was being proposed. And trust suffers because of censorship, because a lack of debate within the scientific community. And so due to the work of this select subcommittee, I think that we have advanced, and people that have disparate voices, people that dare to challenge the current narrative, which we have seen in science time and time again. And I will bring up peptic ulcer disease. Is not caused by type A personality, but a bacteria. And thank goodness people were willing to challenge the medical narrative. But it's disparate voices know that they'll be heard, they will not be censored, and that absolutely 100% will lead to better preparation for the next pandemic. With that, I yield back.